Just press the let's go live button. And so that means we've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. We're always making sure the tubes are clearing themselves out, especially when it's a new year. We don't want any of that 2023 gunk in there. All right. Clean out the tubes, feds. We got new tubes. It's 2024. So come and infest these tubes. Let's make sure the tubes are working. Hello, my friends. We're on YouTube. We got the locals is hopefully working. Let's do a refresh over there. Locals. Is it working? I don't know. There it is. Okay, locals just kicked over. And hopefully Rumble is going on as well. And Rumble looks like we're live there. See, the tubes were a little clogged today. Took a little extra longer than normal. And it looks like we're alive and well. So let's go ahead and get started. It's 2024. Let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney, and today we're talking about Donald Trump's appeal. The immunity appeal is currently underway in the D.C. Circuit. We had some very interesting filings over the holiday break, and so we're going to go through that in depth. Jack Smith submitted his reply brief into the D.C. Circuit Court, and there were some other interesting filings that we're going to get into tomorrow, I think, about Edwin Meese and others, because we're scheduled for oral arguments on this case, I believe, on January 9th. So just about a week away from today, we're going to have oral arguments on this, and we'll probably have some audio on that. So we're very excited about what's happening. But Jack Smith submitted his reply brief. This is on the presidential immunity issue. This is the case that Jack Smith tried to leapfrog. He tried to go directly to the Supreme Court to bypass this court. And of course, SCOTUS said, sorry, Jack, slow down. And they sent him back down to the Court of Appeals. And so we'll be reading through that. Then we'll hear from this guy, you remember him, one of the Capitol Hill police officers, who is, he wrote a new book. Well, go figure. So he showed up on MSNBC's #1 show called Inside Jen Psaki, and they had a conversation about his new book. And she's like, why are you so heroic? Why are you so brave? And he said, well, it's just my story, Jen. She says, wow, that's brilliant. So we'll listen to that. And then Jamie Raskin is out saying that when this does inevitably work its way up to the Supreme Court, that Clarence Thomas, who sits on the Supreme Court, must be recused. And so you can see where this is going. They want to throw him out of contention, out of the conversation. And Raskin that's kind of a new little hairdo that he's got going on. He's always changing his look, you know. So Raskin came out and he was talking about all that as well. So we'll get all into that in the first segment. It's a little bit of a heavy lifting motion. I think it's like 80 pages or something. So we'll hit the highlights and see what is inside. Before we then jump into our second segment, and we're going to learn there what's happening in Florida. Now, this is another issue that we've been paying a lot of attention to. It's this advice of counsel defense. We've had several conversations about this. One of the things that Jack Smith is trying to do here is to say that there is a basis for him to know whether Donald Trump is going to use a certain defense or not, and that Trump needs to disclose that to him now. And this particular defense is whether Trump relied on advice of counsel, whether Trump was leaning on his attorneys in making some decisions. Jack says, if you were, then I'm entitled to those emails between you and your lawyers. And so there's this battle going on. Jack Smith wants this information like now, and Trump is objecting to that, saying you can't have this information. Sorry, pal. So we'll go into that. Then we've got a clip from this guy, Mark Esper, Secretary Defense, I believe, or he was in some position. I forget what it was specifically, but he's coming out now. He's saying Trump is dangerous. And we'll listen to him opine. Then in our last segment, we're going to talk about the Donald Trump, these TDS ex-aid Avengers, who are going to now be warning all of us about the downfall of America. You remember these three ladies. They're out with a new exclusive on whatever channel this was. And they are saying, warning, America, we're all going to die. Because we know Donald Trump and you don't. dummies. So here are these people: Alyssa Farah Griffin, Cassidy Hutchinson, aka Clavicle Girl, and Sarah Matthews, who is apparently the deputy press secretary. They joined together. They put their little, Avenger rings together, the TDS rings. Forces unite. In Liz Cheney's name we assemble. Boom. They whatever. Fly away, zippity-doo-dah-day. So we'll listen to them. Then they're under attack, as you know. Okay, so they're going to lecture us about how every time they speak out to save us all, they turn under attack. It was, okay, great. So everyone else is under attack now, including Jena Griswold from Colorado. The Secretary of State over there says we're all going to die because Trump, and we have to do this stuff to save American democracy and blah, blah, blah. Then we'll also hear from Shenna Bellows. Of course, she's in Maine. And both of these ladies were on that other team Avengers where they were sitting around with all the other secretaries talking about why Donald Trump has to be removed. And then to cleanse the palate, Byron Donalds. All right, we'll have some Byron Donalds come in to explain what is his take on all these whack jobs in the DNC. So we've got 3 segments to get to, as you can see, my friends. The 3 Trump aides. We've got Donald Trump objecting in Florida and the battle over immunity taking place in the D.C. Court of Appeals. But this morning, we had a great members-only stream. We talked about the cover-up that took place right over the transition from 2023 to 2024. SBF, he was going to get charged with a second crime. We were going to have a second trial that was going to unpack and uncover all of the campaign contributions and where all this money went, and largely it was to the Democrats. But unfortunately, we're not going to have that trial. Oh, man. Why is that? Well, because they don't want anybody to know what is actually behind those criminal charges, and they don't want a full investigation because that would air out all the dirty laundry from SBF, the DNC, and the money laundering operation that they had there. So that's what we talked about this morning, my friends. And of course, the year is 2024. And I want to wish everybody a very happy and tremendous new year. We had a lot of fun on New Year's Day, celebrating, ringing in the new year with our fitness challenge. The Watcher fam is doing a fitness challenge. It's all free. It's all, invited. Everybody come and join us. But we're doing it at watcherlodge.com. And so this new year in 2024, we always kind of like to do an existence system or something on the New Year's Day to kind of get away from politics a little bit and remember that we have to be strong and fortified. We have to be very capable people if we're going to survive this next 12 months, let alone the next, insanity that we're going to have to encounter on this never-ending battle against tyranny. So watcherlodge.com, we're doing a 31-day challenge, and you can join us all the way up until Friday. So if it sounds like it's something you want to do, very simple challenge. It's very easy. All you got to do is one day, every day, once a day, just do something good for your health, whatever that is. Exercise, walk, recover, massage, sauna, red light, cold plunge, stretch, sleep, get some extra sleep if you need it. Recovery, if you're sick, 31 days, watcherlodge.com. Come and join us. We are going to have prizes at the end of this, and we did a full summary of what this was on the stream yesterday. And so when you go to watcherlodge.com, this is what it looks like. In fact, you can see we're already on day 2. And so I've been posting my reports. I've been reporting in. Day 1, I reported in from the gym. That's what that looked like. Day 2, this was just a few hours ago, reporting in. I did legs today. Believe it or not, I did legs today. Okay, there's proof. All right, there it is. And you can see that we did the full replay for the full fitness challenge. It's at watcherlodge.com if you want to go check it out. You can just watch the full thing. It's about, I think, 80 minutes or so. And it was a lot of fun. So come check it out, watcherlodge.com. We want you to be healthy. That's why we're giving away prizes. We want to do something as a community together so that we can all bond a little bit, learn this new platform, support each other, and engage. You can see there's already 39 comments, 84 comments on yesterday's, and people are dropping their reports. So get your reports in there at watcherlodge.com. Of course, we've also got our website, robertgovea.com, where you can sign up for our daily newsletter. If you're not interested in the fitness stuff, no problem. But you can sign up, get our newsletter, get the political stuff, the PDFs, the show reports, all that stuff is available, robertgovea.com. And then for our membos, we're doing our members only after party today, right after the show. Come on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Come check out our Saturday shows. We did a great Saturday show. at watchingthewatchers.locals.com as well. And so a lot of fun stuff cooking in the Watcher fam, and I'm really having a lot of fun with you guys. So thanks for joining us on all the activities and all the fun. All right, now let's get into it because we've got some meat and potatoes to get into. Jack Smith, the illegitimate special counsel, according to former Attorney General Edwin Meese, well, he submitted his reply brief on the immunity issue, and this is a very important issue, a historic issue that's going to impact the presidency and the future of the executive branch for all time. But Jack Smith says Trump doesn't have it. Everybody else in this country has immunity, like judges, police officers, prosecutors, even Jack Smith has immunity, except the president. Otherwise, bad things can happen. That is Jack Smith's argument. He literally says that if we give the president immunity, he can take out his political opponents, man. He can eliminate them right off the top. He's actually concerned about that, Jack Smith, in his reply brief. And so this is at the Court of Appeals in the D.C. Circuit. So it's out of Judge Chutkan's courtroom. We left her courtroom. We're in the Court of Appeals. Remember, before we get into it, that Jack Smith tried to leapfrog these people, okay? He tried to go directly up to the Supreme Court, say, can you please hear from me? I'm so petrified that I'm not going to get my conviction in before the election that I need you, Supreme Court, to please take this and handle it now, so that they can send it back to Judge Chutkan and so that the trial can get back on track. Well, SCOTUS said, sorry, Jack, not happening. They said, you've got an obligation to now go through the Court of Appeals, go do that. And so that's where we're at now. The Court of Appeals, we've already read here on this channel, Donald Trump's opening brief. This is the reply to that brief. And so we're going to go through it before we hear some reaction from some Capitol Hill police and from this guy. You know him as Jamie Raskin, who is the person who is going to respond to this and say that when this does eventually land at the Supreme Court, our friend Judge Thomas needs to recuse himself. So before we get into all that, let's start with the filing. Jack Smith submits this reply in the case against Donald Trump in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. We've left Judge Chutkan's courtroom. Judge Chutkan has already said to us that Donald Trump has no immunity. If we gave him immunity, the whole entire country would explode into smithereens. And so this is the filing. It's the answering brief from the United States submitted by the illegitimate special counsel called Jack Smith. That's according to a former attorney general, not me. Molly, highlighter girls here, along with Thomas Wyndham and the others. And so they submit this. It's on appeal from Chutkan's courtroom, and we are scheduled for oral arguments on this matter on January 9th. Which we're very excited to hear about. And the justices who are going to be listening to this, they've also indicated that they want to hear some briefings on the amicus briefings that have been filed. And one of those amicus briefings that has been filed is from former Attorney General Edwin Meese, the same issue that we covered when he was submitting his amicus to the Supreme Court. At the Supreme Court level, he said Jack Smith is illegitimate. Of course, SCOTUS rejected that for now. And so now that got resubmitted as an amicus in this courtroom. And we're going to have a lot to talk about on January 9th. So be sure that you're subscribed here to our channel, wherever it is you're watching this. Now, this is some of the highlights. It's an 82-pager. A lot of this is just the minutia that we like to fast forward through. We know who the parties are. Okay, we're very familiar with Trump and the deranged thugs in Jack Smith's offices. We know that there are several rulings under review. Of course, the one is Donald Trump's motion to dismiss the entire case, the entire indictment, gone. Why? One, immunity, presidential immunity, and the other because of double jeopardy. The idea being Donald Trump was already indicted, impeached, and then tried and acquitted in the Senate. So we've got other cases that are percolating, and of course, we're going to fast forward the table of contents, but you can see that they are here through the table of authorities, a lot of cases being cited. And we fast forward into the goodness now. Jack Smith and the deranged thugs at his government illegitimate office tell us, all right, dear Court of Appeals, for the first time in our nation's history, it's Jack Smith, a grand jury has charged a former president with committing crimes while in office to overturn an election that he lost. Yeah, that's great. A grand jury. Okay, historic. You guys got a bunch of rigged DC grand jurors that already hate Trump to indict Trump. Historic. Amazing. you can indict a ham sandwich, as we all know. In response, but they say this is like a giant victory. All right. Now, in response, Donald Trump, he claims that to protect the institution of the presidency, that he must be cloaked with absolute immunity from criminal prosecution unless the House impeached and the Senate convicted him for the same conduct. Okay, let's go. They say he is wrong. If I stop it under every sentence, this will take us 2 weeks to get through. Now, separation of powers principles, constitutional text, and history and precedent, they all make it clear that former presidents may be prosecuted for criminal acts that he committed while in office, including, most critically here, illegal acts to remain in power despite losing an election. All right, so we're meddling and mixing up a bunch of different issues here, but one that you can just tease right out is obviously the difference between absolute immunity. Okay, Trump's never made the argument that he can just go execute someone on Fifth Street and that would lead to immunity, right? Absolute. They're not making that argument. The argument was never about absolute immunity. It's saying that if it's within the outer perimeter, okay, that's the argument that Trump has been making from day one. And enforcing an election is within the outer perimeter of that. Making sure it's not rigged and speaking out and saying fight like hell, stuff like that, it's not criminal conduct. So anyway, so you can see they're taking the argument and they're pulling the court all the way back. They're extending it all the way in. So Trump could just nuke the whole city of Arizona then. I know it's a state. Okay, I live here. Now, the presidency plays a vital role in our constitutional system, but so does the principle of accountability for criminal acts, which, okay, particularly those that strike at the heart of the democratic process. Now, rather than vindicating our constitutional framework, Trump's sweeping immunity threatens to license presidents to commit crimes to remain in office. Okay, so if we give Trump what he wants, he'll never leave. Now, the founders did not intend, and they would never have countenanced such a result. And multiple safeguards, all that are ultimately enforced by the courts. And so now we're asking Jack Smith, what's the safeguard against an over-partisan executive that is prosecuting their political opponents? What is the safeguard? Jack Smith is going to say, oh, it's the courts. The courts are going to do it. It's not the political process. It's not that you have a safety valve that says, okay, we only actually prosecute somebody when it's borderline when it is done and impeached by the Senate. Let's see. It says here that the courts are going to protect any things that are burdens on the presidency, and they're going to protect Trump. Got it. You mean like Judge Chutkan? Right. So here they say Donald Trump asserts that this prosecution threatens to shatter the very bedrock of our republic. So Congress doesn't have a role in the executive, or in governing the executive or tapering down their prosecutions, saying you're limited to prosecuting only when you jump past the political hurdles. Okay. If we impeach them. So for example, here's a safety valve. If Trump goes out on 6th Street and, eliminates somebody, well, he's going to be impeached and convicted pretty dang quickly, wouldn't he? Because there would be mass consensus that was insanity, right? That it's like a jury process, right? We have that process. It's that safety valve for that reason. So then we know it's not political because everybody votes overwhelmingly. Okay, convict him. It happens in 30 seconds. Boom, impeachment. Boom, convicted. This was clearly criminal. And then that opens up the floodgates to all other legitimate prosecutions. So that is one way by which you can just bypass whatever they're arguing here. And that's the democracy in action. But they don't want that. They don't want to allow that safety valve to taper down their efforts. They say here, to the contrary, if we believe like Trump says, it is Trump's claim that he cannot be held to answer for the charges. Here's their charges. Now watch how they conjugate this, how to make this emotional. His unprecedented effort to retain power through criminal means, despite having lost the election, that threatens the democratic and constitutional foundation of our republic. And this court should affirm and issue the mandate expeditiously. Okay, he wants to go really fast here to further the public's and the defendant's compelling interest in a prompt resolution of this case. So first of all, I'm a member of the public. I don't have any interest in an expeditious resolution of this, okay? Justice that is rushed through is not justice at all. We like due process in this country. And we like the defense to have the opportunity and to be afforded the ability to actually read the discovery, the evidence in the case. Saying that Trump can't read 14 million pages of documents because Judge Chutkan and deranged Jack Smith, illegitimate, because they want a trial in March, that's not due process. The public has no interest in that at all. That is a denial of process in our justice system. That's not interesting. And it's also not in Trump's interest as well, obviously, because he can't read it. Now, it's in Jack Smith's interest, and they have not really done a nice job of articulating what this means. Like specifically, like tell us what that means, Jack. What is the public's interest in it? I have a lot more interest in due process than I do racing to trial to convict him. Now, he's not my political opponent. He is theirs. Is that the interest? Now, if you're like, just tell us if that's the truth. What is the need for the expeditiousness, Jack? All right, jurisdictional statement. They say we're here in court. These are the two questions. One, whether Donald Trump is immune from federal prosecution for crimes that were committed while he served as president. That's how they frame it. Now, that's not how Trump's going to frame it. And number two, whether the defendant's impeachment, that's Donald Trump, in the House, followed by an acquittal in the Senate, precludes his criminal prosecution under double jeopardy, saying that he's already been tried. Okay, Donald Trump literally was already impeached on January 6th stuff, and he was acquitted. So here, they tell us the facts and the procedural background. We're going to go through this quickly, but of course, they tell us Donald Trump lost the election in 2020, that they rigged. Nonetheless, according to a grand jury indictment, in the weeks that they rigged also, right, where they're DC jurors, in the weeks following the election, Trump conspired to knowingly use false claims of election fraud to overturn the legitimate results, that's debatable, of the election and disenfranchising millions of voters, which is funny because that's what they're doing now in Colorado, Maine, and elsewhere. Now, the conspiracies, they say, culminated in an attack on the Capitol, which was, I would say, exacerbated or orchestrated by Nancy Pelosi and the intelligence communities, who were even picking up people like Kenny Lazario from jail the day before. A member of the Proud Boys, who was part of the Proud Boys conspiracy, okay? FBI was picking him up from jail. Enrique Tarrio, I'm sorry. Kenny Lazario picked up Enrique Tarrio. He was an FBI informant picking up Enrique Tarrio. So you get it. Now here, House of Congress met to certify the presidential election results in accordance with procedures set out in the Constitution and federal law. Now, a violent mob forced past police officers into the Capitol building, and multiple people were dead, leaving multiple people dead, like the ones at the Capitol Hill police shot without warning, Ashley Babbitt. And just pops out, just shoots her. She's dead. Or was it Roseanne Boylan that we saw Capitol Hill police officers beating her with a stick? Or was it Brian Sicknick who died of natural causes, according to the Capitol Hill police? Now, they try to frame that as though he was murdered by MAGA, but he wasn't. Okay, Capitol Hill police even acknowledged that. So I don't know who they're talking about specifically. Injuring more than 140 people, inflicting millions of dollars in damage to the Capitol. Right, and that's all their numbers. Which is always so funny to me because we know that it was, I think $1 billion? I think $1 billion, like the Summer of Love, where people who were not Trumpers, that's for sure, were burning down the 3rd Precinct, Minneapolis. Remember how much that was? I think it was $1 billion, that Summer of Love, and hundreds of people dead also. Not multiple people, hundreds back then. But anyways, that was a whole side issue. You know, this is what the Justice Department is focused on. Anyways, 5 days later, House of Representatives adopted an impeachment resolution, and that was by Nancy Pelosi, crammed that through. House impeached the defendant. Trial was held in the Senate. Senate said no jurisdiction to try him, is what their argument was. Now, 57 senators voted to convict. Trump was not convicted. 57 voted to convict. 43 senators voted to acquit, resulting in an acquittal. Okay, Donald Trump was acquitted because you need a 2/3 majority for an impeachment conviction. And that is by design, right? That is so that it is not political. You want to make sure that there is a strong majority to make sure this thing is not political. That's how you know it's actually bad. Because obviously, right, if you just get, okay, it's just simple majorities here and there, you get the, you know, it goes along party lines. You make it simple majority, you just get 51. And that's it. You want it to be overwhelming, right? When you have, it's analogous to an actual jury, right? You want an actual jury to be unanimous in their vote. Come out. Okay, it's all unanimous. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, how do you find? Not guilty. All of you? Yeah, all of you, right? Otherwise, it is a mistrial. You've got a hung jury. You got to go back and get back to it. So it's the same thing. You want to make sure it's near unanimous. Okay, it's not political. It's clearly not political. That's why it's 2/3. But this, of course, was political, and it didn't overcome all of that. So Donald Trump was acquitted. That's what the Constitution says. That's why we have this process. It is the due process. But they didn't like that, okay? This was not the outcome that they wanted. So then on August 1st, a grand jury then charged him with a 4-count indictment because illegitimate Jack Smith was appointed by Merrick Garland because Merrick Garland was scared of Joe Biden, who was mad at him. So they charged him with conspiracy to defraud the United States. Okay, so simple like fraud charges. Says, what else were the counts? But you know what? None of the counts that we saw in here, not a single one for insurrection. That's weird. No one got charged with that. Not a single one for seditious conspiracy. How come that's the case? We know they charged the Proud Boys with that. We know they charged the Oath Keepers with that. Where are those charges? Oh, they don't exist. Why? Because those were already tried in the Senate, and he was acquitted on those. So here, then Donald Trump, after all of that, we know that story. They charged him with fake crimes for which he is immune. And then Donald Trump filed motions to dismiss. In one, he said that he's immune for acts that are within the outer perimeter of his official presidential responsibilities. Okay, that's Trump's phrasing here. Not Trump can just go out and start mowing down people in the middle of a park somewhere. Okay, his argument is he's immune for acts in the outer perimeter of his official presidential responsibilities. Now, this is a novel thing for Jack Smith, but it's the same thing that happens with judges and prosecutors, right? If a prosecutor does something within the confines of his duties, and maybe it's, borderline, they're good, or pick a police officer. We see this all the time. Okay, a police officer, for example, he gets a claim of abuse against him, right? You abused me, man. Unlawful force has been used against me, and blah, 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 right? You know the story you see in the movies all the time, right? Somebody makes a claim. Cop says, I was just doing my job. It goes to internal affairs. You're kind of just doing your job. It's within the outer perimeter. We might say that was totally out of line or whatever. It's close, so we question it. We give the cop the benefit of the doubt, because if we don't, then they're going to get every time something happens, they're going to get sued. We're not going to have any cops anymore. So you create qualified immunity so that stuff within the outer perimeter is protected. Now, if that same cop goes out and he starts openly committing crimes, okay, what happens? Boom. That guy gets charged with the crime. It's not even a question. Okay, because that immunity does not protect him. But Jack Smith is saying that's what Trump is claiming here, that he can just go out and do whatever he wants, which was never the argument that Trump was claiming. He said that my speech and my obligations as a president to make sure that we do not have rigged elections that are colluded with, the CIA, with mainstream media to cover up your political opponent's dirty laundry, so that you don't have judges working with secretaries of states in multiple jurisdictions in this country, changing the rules of the election. The executive is supposed to make sure we do have free and fair elections. And we just talked about a poll on this morning. About 30% of the country and growing is saying that they don't believe Joe Biden was legitimately elected. So they're recognizing as the facade falls off. So as we continue, they say in another, Donald Trump also said that all the allegations fall within the outer perimeter. Okay, he didn't actually do any criminal conduct. And in another, he said that the double jeopardy clause precludes his prosecution because he was literally already acquitted on this conduct. So the district court, Judge Shutkin, denied the motions and the double jeopardy motions, and she explained her reasonings, and we fast forward through that. But now, this is Jack Smith and his thugs writing. The defendant, Donald Trump, is a former president. They say he does not enjoy immunity from federal prosecutions for the offenses charged in this case. So now we're getting a little bit narrower. All right. So at the very top, when we started this, it was Trump has absolute immunity from all criminal conduct. Remember how that started? So very broad. Trump says he's immune from everything. Okay. Actually, no. we're narrowing it. Trump's now saying it's only about the offenses charged in this case because you charged legal conduct as crimes. So under separation of powers analysis, they're saying, oh gosh, I'm gonna have a headache after this segment. Who's doing this analysis for us? I don't know. I haven't seen who wrote it yet. The president's unique constitutional status provides immunity from civil liability for official conduct, but not criminal liability when he's charged with federal criminal statutes. That's weird. So that means any DOJ illegally appointed hack like Jack Smith, who was never lawfully appointed or confirmed by the Senate, he can just charge anybody under criminal statutes, and then the president is automatically not immune. Got it. So any burdens of post-presidency criminal liability have minimal impact on the functions of an incumbent, and they're outweighed by the paramount public interest in upholding the rule of law through federal prosecution. Well, I disagree, Jack. I've got a public interest in making sure that 234 years of historical precedent are not shattered by demented, deranged prosecutors who are not even legally appointed in the first place. That's our public interest, not in fracturing our democracy, our republic, because of you, who are now prosecuting your political opponents like it's a free-for-all. 4 of them, 4 charges, 4 cases now. So constitutional text, historical practice, and other immunity doctrines confirm our conclusion. They say the impeachment judgment clause limits Congress's remedies to removal and disqualification. And so therefore, it prevents the Senate from doing criminal punishment. So now you see what they're going to do here. They're going to say, oh, no, double jeopardy is only attached to criminal type stuff. The Senate is not criminal. It's not analogous enough. And so it's not actually double jeopardy. Because the first one wasn't, we didn't even have 1 jeopardy, let alone double. But it does not make a conviction a condition precedent to criminal prosecution. No historical materials support the defendant's broad immunity claim. And the post-presidency pardon that Nixon accepted reflects a consensus view that a former president is subjected to prosecution. So because Nixon was afraid that he committed open crimes, Trump is not immune for acting within the confines of the power of the presidency. Got it. Nice, Jack. Nor can presidential immunity be derived from the speech and debate clause. More apt is the immunity for judges and prosecutors, but they're immune for civil liability for official conduct, but not from federal prosecution. Again, they're either immune or they're not. Okay. Now, if they committed a crime, if they committed something that was outside of the purview of their official duties, that would open them up to liability. Just like the unlawful, use of force example. If a police officer is unlawfully using force against somebody, that goes outside of the scope of the protection. They have a force field around them. They step outside of the force field, and now they are open to criminal prosecution because they have committed a crime, because it is not within the confines of the outer perimeter. It's the same way it works everywhere. But here they say Trump does not advance a position short of absolute immunity for the conduct that he describes at a high level of generality as to official acts, which was, so now we're going back to the actual language of the indictment. What did the indictment say that Trump did bad? But even assuming the court wished to reserve the possibility of some narrower constitutional protection for former presidents from prosecution for conduct that is essential to their constitutionally assigned functions, the doctrine would have no application to Trump. Because they say, no, even if you did grant the president some immunity, it doesn't apply to Trump. Why? Because Trump, now this is wild, Trump is alleged to have conspired with private individuals and government officials to use fraudulent means to thwart the transfer of power and remain in office. So in other words, the president can have immunity unless we, in our indictment, allege something that pulls him out of the immunity doctrine. So now all you need is a prosecutor to just properly plead your criminal charges. Just make sure you include in there, oh, a conspiracy charge with private individuals. Just make it up as you go along. Tuck that in there. and say, even if a former president could claim immunity, dismissal here would be unwarranted because this indictment contains substantial allegations of a plot to overturn the election that fall well outside the perimeter of the official presidential responsibilities. That feels a little copy to me. I'm not so sure about that. I feel like they are stretching there. A plot, okay, each one of these, this is one of the dumbest indictments ever. It was like, okay, conspiracy because Trump said some things, conspiracy because Trump talked to Mike Pence about some things, conspiracy because Donald Trump talked with some alternate electors about some things. It's like, okay, these are all like executive functions where he's having conversations with people about a rigged election. What are you talking about? That's your plot? So in other words, the president has immunity, but what are you going to charge him on? So don't dismiss the indictment because of these substantial allegations. But if he has immunity, what are you going to do with it? I don't know. So Trump's acquittal at an impeachment trial, Wines Jack, does not bar the prosecution under either the impeachment clause or the double jeopardy clause. Why? The impeachment clause limits congressional sanctions for impeachment to removal and disqualification. It does not create, there you go, a double jeopardy prohibition that protects the impeachment from criminal prosecution. In other words, it's not the first jeopardy. What is the first jeopardy? Question mark. Daily double. Nice. Got it. Now, structural considerations, including the special function of impeachment within the constitutional separation of powers and the many distinctions between impeachment and criminal verdicts, reinforce this idea that the impeachment judgment clause allows the prosecution of a former president impeached but acquitted by the Senate. Why? Nor here is the prosecution here barred by double jeopardy, because the only remedies available in the impeachment proceedings were removal and disqualification. He was never placed in jeopardy. There it is. There was not a first jeopardy. But even if he were, the indictment here, oh man, that's bad. Even if he were, though, the indictment charges different offenses that were at issue in his impeachment. Yeah, Jack, that's right. Because in the impeachment, they actually charged him with insurrection, right? That was actually in there, and you didn't charge it here. So he was acquitted on that one, and now you're trying to shoehorn it in, but there is no insurrection here. But it's a little different, though. Even if he does have double jeopardy, because we already tried this and lost, let's try it again because it's a little different. Sorry, Jack. Oh, man, he's kind of scrambling here. All right, jump into the argument section. He says, the defendant Trump, he argues that presidential immunity and principles of double jeopardy now warrant a dismissal. But those arguments lack support in everything. Powers of separation of powers, constitutional text, history, and precedent. And, oh my gosh, look at this. Both arguments threaten to undermine democracy. Bingo, if you're playing at home. There it is. All right. Undermine democracy. So now even your simple arguments, how dare you be so anti-democratic in making illegal arguments? Wow. So even Trump saying, hello, presidential immunity, an issue that's never been litigated before because psychopaths have not prosecuted anybody before in 234 years. Have we had other bad presidents before? Ever? In this country? You're saying like this is the worst it's ever been? Okay. And because Trump is making just a simple defense, defending himself, presidential immunity and double jeopardy, Donald Trump is undermining American democracy with his legal filings alone. Now, the defendant's immunity claim implies that a president may use any means necessary to remain in power, and he can evade criminal liability for his conduct unless he's first impeached and convicted. And which should be like a no-brainer, okay? If the president commits a crime, it's like a no-brainer, right? That's not a bad thing, actually. Like, we want to make sure that it's not a political hatchet job. If we have to go through that mechanism to make sure we don't have hack thugs like Jack Smith prosecuting their political opponents on a whim because Merrick Garland had a bad day in Joe's office when Joe had a bad ice cream, then that is appropriate. Okay, it's a safeguard. It's a constitutional safeguard. Perfect. And his invocation of double jeopardy implies that a Senate acquittal of a former president because he's no longer in office, which was not the reason. Okay, that was one reason. That was a contingent of them, that it forever insulates him from his criminal accountability. Okay, so what Jack Smith is arguing is he's saying part of the Senate said that the reason they voted to acquit him is because we don't have jurisdiction anymore. Okay, it was a fake because. It was senators who just didn't, they were too squishy. They didn't know what to do. It was a fake because. Doesn't really matter what the reason was. Okay, they voted to acquit him. It didn't jump over the hurdle, so it wasn't bad enough to get over the political barriers. It should be obvious to all parties that this person is a bad person. Get rid of him. Otherwise, we risk it being political, as it is now. So they say here, those claims draw no support from our constitutional heritage that they care about. And if accepted, it would damage the bedrock principles of equality before the law. And the court should affirm Judge Chutkan's Chutkany order. Now, they say Trump has no immunity from federal prosecution. An individual who has served as president but is no longer in office may face investigation, indictment, and trial for conduct committed during the presidency. So you don't have any protections, says Jack. Now, the president stands alone in the constitutional firmament, but legal principles and historical evidence say that once out of office, a former president may face criminal prosecution like any citizen. Okay, for conduct that's protected within the confines of the outer perimeter while they're in office, because that's Trump's argument here. So he's taking us somewhere else where we're not. Okay. They say separation of powers provides no support for immunizing a former president from federal criminal prosecution. Now, although the Supreme Court has not squarely addressed this, womp womp, they're gonna, it has consistently rejected claims that a president is immune from criminal process, even while recognizing some immunity. That misstates the law. In this line of cases, the governing separation of powers, and it's all from the Nixon case, which we've read a lot. They say the founders were keenly aware that the vesting executive power in vesting a single person carries with it unique risks of abuse. As James Madison said, Congress and a multi-member body made it implausible. And by contrast, some nice reading there from James Madison. But they say never, which also, by the way, just makes the point. Like they're almost making our point for us. If you have an executive power, thanks guys for making this point. The founders were aware that if you vest executive power in a single person, it carries unique risks of abuse. That's a great line. I agree. You guys are doing it. You're currently in charge of the executive branch. And what happens when you have political prosecutions that we've never seen before? James Madison would be furious about this. You are prosecuting Trump. You are abusing the executive branch to prosecute your political opponents totally unjustly. And what we're talking about is a safeguard literally against that. Okay, presidential immunity is a safeguard against the next president abusing their power. In this context, that's exactly what we're talking about. So thank you for making our point. Now, the defendant nevertheless advances the broad argument. He says that the separation of powers mandates immunity from any judicial review of a president's official acts. And for that proposition, we go back to Marbury versus Madison that established judicial review. And so a lot of analysis there. They say Trump's remaining authorities also did not establish anything. And we fast forward through a lot of this. They say, finally, Trump's blanket claim that the courts cannot review presidential acts is contradicted by his own opinion. They say that Trump said that a president may be prosecuted, but only if he's first impeached, tried, and convicted. Now, that concession is fundamentally inconsistent. If courts can hear criminal cases, presidential acts are plainly not beyond the reach of the judiciary. Yeah, very clever. Okay. Okay. You're missing the sequencing here. After you are convicted in the Senate, now it opens up, it's the political, it's like a preliminary hearing. It's not even that complicated. It's like a preliminary hearing before the case goes down the trial path. That's all we're talking about. So Jack Smith continues. Let's get to another section here. As he writes, they say, Article 3 courts are going to be the agencies that address any legally defective prosecutions. Now, this is where I just get furious about this, because we're in Article 3 courts right now. We're in Judge Chutkan's courtroom. It has been Psychoville. Okay, that judge has said that Trump's defense can read 13 million pages, now 14 million and counting, of documents, which is like, I don't know, 25 Washington monuments at this point. Literally stacked tall. His defense doesn't even need to read it. They don't need time to read it because Molly Gaston, the highlighter girl from the DOJ, highlighted the documents and said, well, this is our anticipated plan of attack. And so Trump now has little sticky notes and tabs that he can just flip over from Washington Monument to Washington Monument and read everything. It is not due process. This is a sham, and it has been enabled by Judge Chutkan specifically. So this is insane, right? This is not the safety valve. That's why we need the safety valve in Congress, which is the impeachment mechanism. They say that former presidents enjoy the same protection as all citizens do about vindictive or selective prosecution. Well, they don't. And Trump's not alone in Chutkan's jurisdiction. Okay, the J6ers are a part of this problem too. Unfortunately, they don't have citizen immunity. Now, and courts could be expected to review a president's claims. They say here, the extent that Trump believes that these are new and novel charges are totally unsound. And complementing those protections are the rigorous standards that we need to have to prove criminal offenses. And so we have, which is it's an important standard beyond a reasonable doubt. Our standard's very high standard, but it's also essentially meaningless in certain jurisdictions. For example, you could go, I think, to any jurisdiction, and somebody's probably done the numbers on these, but just compare and contrast the January 6 cases and the conviction rate in those cases. I would like to know a couple numbers. The J6 cases and conviction rate to other criminal cases in DC, just as a general rule. Okay, so let's put all the January 6 cases in the federal courts in DC, which is where we are, in one bucket, and every other crime. Okay, and so because we're in federal court, we're not going to see the domestic violences and all the disorderly conducts and all of those, because we are in federal court. But you could just say, let's take, for example, let's take those cases. Let's go to the DC court and just say, okay, how many people who are getting charged with domestic violence and burglary, a lot of car robberies going on in DC right now, how many assaults are taking place, all right, how many, everything else, right, all of the crimes, the urinating in Publix, all the things. What is the conviction rates when those cases go to trial? So in January 6 cases, I believe it's like 99.98% are convicted. There's been like 2 cases where there were acquittals. So what is that compared to the other cases in regular DC business? What's the conviction rate there? It's probably what? Half that? So why is that? So don't give me that garbage about rigorous standards. Okay, it's clearly unequal standards of law. Or just pick that in any, take that federal case also into the federal, you don't have to go to DC local stuff where they're letting everyone out, but just apply it even-handedly. There are no rigorous standards. There is no equal protection of the law. This entire jurisdiction has become problematic. So they say, but no, the standards are just going to be good enough. What evidentiary limitations? Trump can't even read his filings, Jack. Says, and also the federal prosecution must prove the guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That's great. But no one cares about that standard if you're a DC juror and the defendant is Trump. It's easy. They walk in and he's guilty. So here they say the government has a tough standard. We have a difficult thing to prove. No, you don't. The overriding interest here, as in any federal case, oh my gosh, this is how these people think and talk to themselves. Okay, this is what Jack Smith does when he wakes up in the morning along with Molly and Thomas. They say, the overriding interest in our lives is upholding the rule of law. Give me a friggin' break, okay? You're prosecuting somebody that you absolutely hate and you get glee out of it. The immunity would undermine that critical interest. And so Chutkan was right. The greater public interest here is because it's criminal. And if you give far-reaching immunity, listen to the Jack here. If you give Trump far-reaching immunity, it would also expose the nation to dangerous risks. Under Trump's view, unless a former president had first been impeached and convicted, which again would be like a no-brainer, right? Just like a preliminary hearing, somebody, does something very criminal, that person is indicted and detained like instantly. Happens instantly, right? It's a very fast process. Congress can get it together. So this is like a joke. It's like, okay, so what? If the person does something criminal, yeah, impeach him and convict him. So what? Don't you want any process? Don't you want a judge to make a decision on something before the defendant is just is convicted and thrown away the key? Anyways, unless Trump has been put through the process, he would be wholly immune from criminal prosecution for acts that ostensibly are within the outer perimeter of his official duties. Now let's get into these examples, especially when those acts are crimes that benefit him and endanger the republic. So here is what they could do. A former president like Trump, if you grant this, Judge, he could then bank on the practical obstacles to impeachment to provide a safe harbor that would insulate him. Immunity from criminal prosecutions would be particularly dangerous, whereas here, the former President Trump is alleged to have engaged in criminal conduct aimed at overturning the presidential election. And a president who unlawfully seeks to retain power through criminal means would be unchecked by potential criminal prosecution, could jeopardize both himself and the very foundations of our democratic system of governance. It's like, no, it's not, Jack. All you have to do, dummy, you just admitted it, is just impeach him and convict him. It's like, it's easy. That's it. So if a president does that, just go and do that. Now, the implications of this broad immunity theory are sobering. Listen to all these examples. In his view, Jack Smith in the illegitimate deranged thug office there says, in his view, a court should treat a president's criminal conduct as immune from prosecution so long as it takes the form of a correspondence with a state official about a matter in which there is a federal interest, which is like, okay, so he can just like write a letter. It kind of matters what's in the letter. Whether it's a meeting with a member of the executive branch or whether it's a statement on a matter of public concern. This is pretty stupid. That approach would grant immunity from criminal prosecution to a president who accepts a bribe in exchange for directing a lucrative government contract to the payer. This is not even a complicated issue here. All right, this is the same thing that happens with lawyers and clients. Okay, just because you're meeting with your lawyer doesn't mean that you can like commit a bunch of crimes. Okay, what Jack Smith is talking about is an envelope of criminality. You go, you meet with your lawyer. The lawyer says, I'm going to, the defendant says to the lawyer, I'm going to rob a bank tomorrow. You go, what? I'm going to rob a bank tomorrow. And since you're my lawyer, there's nothing you can do about it. And I'm going to go do it tomorrow. And I've got a gun and I'm ready to go. Okay, well, the lawyer doesn't just say, well, okay. The lawyer has some ethical things to consider and consult your state and consult your ethics counsel over this. But there's legal mechanics that the lawyer right now has to respond to that and say, okay, we're not going to allow the loss of life. We're not going to allow you to go commit another crime. Or the lawyer says, I'll actually do the crime with you. Why don't we just go rob the bank together? Because this is a attorney-client relationship and we've got protections of this, whatever, right? It's like there are ebbs and flows to this stuff. There are boundaries. There are limitations here. But what Jack is saying is Trump can just insurrect America because he sat down with somebody in the executive office. Hey, come into the Oval Office and we're going to talk about all sorts of crimes. And because it's an executive meeting, nobody can charge me. It's like a magical force field. That's not what he's talking about. And he said stuff that was, open and in the public, and he was advocating openly about a rigged election. So anyways, right, he's mixing a bunch of issues together. He's trying to say that the envelope creates this new novel concept, which it doesn't. Okay, we've already hashed all of this out in other domains in the law. So for example, a president who instructs the FBI director to plant incriminating evidence on a political enemy. Okay, that would clearly be criminal, operating outside of the confines of the law. And, obviously that person would be convicted, if this were true, right, it all comes out and it's not political and we've got clear evidence about this, then Congress would say that is clearly criminal. And he would be charged for that, right? If it's true. Now, if it's something made up, or if it's like the FBI director who's like instead covering up for like Hillary Clinton, who deleted a bunch of stuff like with the cloth or something like that. So if the FBI is covering up for other people like the Clintons, that might actually impose something difficult. But this is kind of an insane example. They're really just pulling. Here's another example. A president who orders the National Guard to murder. Trump might order the National Guard to just murder his critics. Jack Smith wrote that in an actual filing. I don't know who wrote this, but Jack Smith's office did. If Trump gets his way, he could just murder everybody. Just go on The View, on MSNBC or wherever. I don't know what they're saying. This is Jack Smith's delusional fantasy, not mine. What is he talking about? I have no idea. Now, a president could also sell nuclear secrets to a foreign adversary. Is any of that within the confines of Judge's areola? Because in each of these scenarios, writes the deranged thug Jack Smith, the president could assert that he was simply executing the law. Oh no, I was just meeting with my constituents. All right. Trump says, I was just meeting with my constituents as he's out there mowing down everybody. What are you talking? What is what? No, I was just meeting at the DNC. I was debating Joe Biden. What are you talking about? People are mental. Or communicating with the DOJ, or discharging his powers, or engaging in foreign diplomacy. Under Trump's framework, the nation would have no recourse to deter a president from inciting his supporters during a State of the Union to kill opposing lawmakers. Which I think they think he already did that. Isn't that what they say he already did? Nothing could deter a president from inciting his supporters. I'm pretty sure that's what they think is happening here, thereby hamstringing any impeachment proceedings. So Trump just says, all right, I want you to go take out any Republicans who are not voting for me. Execute Order 66. Nah. And all the Republicans just, get vaporized with lightsabers. It's mental. So then Trump can just kill everybody, kill all the Democrats in one fell swoop. Thereby, it's not going to be any impeachment now. Oh, you want to impeach me, punks? Not so fast. They all get taken out. They're like, no, acquit, sir. Sir, we acquit you, sir. We acquit you, sir. All right, so they say that's what Trump could ensure he remains in office lawfully. Now, it's psycho behavior, but honestly, this stuff is like reminiscent of what they're doing, okay? They are not inciting supporters to go take out the opponents. They're using the DOJ to go after their opponents. Joe Biden came out from his Gates of Hell speech and said we're all MAGA extremists. You remember that? What's the next step? So they say such a result would severely undermine the compelling public interest in the rule of law and of criminal accountability. And so they continue, they say, the constitutional text and the historic practice and other immunity doctrines support our side, not your side, saying that here the text and other immunity doctrines, nothing else supports Trump. And unlike this other text, our text is better. Now, the constitutional impeachment system explains why there's no implicit immunity. They say the phrase high crimes and misdemeanors was aimed at misconduct of men, and high crimes and misdemeanors, a lot of constitutional background here. A lot of quotes. You can see we're fast forwarding through a lot of the copy and pasting. They say Hamilton's description of the impeachment process supports the constitutional difference between the political means of removing an official and the legal means of holding someone accountable. And so that they are separate and different. And so therefore, since they're separate, there's no double jeopardy in the first proceedings. Now you can see Jack Smith continues on, and we'll jump into the next section to see what he has for us. And there's a lot, the reason I'm fast forwarding through a lot of this is just copy and paste. Anytime you see a lot of these ellipses and the italics, that is just case law, a lot of it being copied and pasted here. Now, as we get to subsection C, this is the cope paragraph. Now, even if separation of powers limited federal prosecution, like even if there is some immunity, even if there is double jeopardy, even if we're totally dead wrong here, those principles would still not require a dismissal. Okay, so please don't dismiss this case. All right, like even if we're dead wrong, like just let it go. Now, because a former president does not have sweeping immunity, this case should proceed to trial. They say that straightforward conclusion would not foreclose the possibility of a future prosecution, and other courts can deal with those later. And so the court doesn't need to address all of these issues right now. They're saying just keep it very narrowed. The indictment here only alleges conspiracy to overturn a presidential election and targeting of state officials. And so don't go into, they're asking the court, don't go into all this broad immunity stuff, okay? Keep it very narrow and specific here. Why? Because Trump, they're making the argument that Trump's crimes are not like all other crimes, okay? Think about Trump's crimes and like Menendez's crimes. You know, Menendez was allegedly taking gold bars for favors, right? Political favors. Get this guy not prosecuted, call this U.S. attorney, whatever. And those were crimes of moral turpitude. Those were crimes of dishonesty, but they didn't necessarily go to the, continuity of the government is what Jack Smith's argument is. And so Trump is specifically corruptly trying to claim onto power, and that makes his case much more serious than another crime. Like it would be actually less of a crime if it was just about money. If it's just about, violence, if it's just about, something else that's not the power of the country, because it is that, they say, this is where you should give it more scrutiny. And even if Trump were entitled to immunity, please don't dismiss this case. They say dismissal is at a minimum unwarranted because Trump has no remotely viable claim that all of the allegations are within the outer perimeter of his official responsibility, which sounds to me like they're conceding that some of this is. Rather, the indictment alleges substantial conduct as a part of the charged conspiracies that go well beyond any plausible claims of official acts. So we're asking about the size of the hula hoop and Engeron's areola. How, where is the conduct? Where does it fall in? Where does it fall out? Here, Trump is alleged to have conspired with and directed individuals outside the government to help him subvert the country. And the same is true for other allegations as well. And so because there were other people outside of the scope, they were outside of the areola, outside of the hula hoop, that those types of claims need to be considered, and you can't dismiss the entire indictment. They say Trump has made a bunch of conclusory allegations here, and his claims that he was carrying out official duties, he just said, why? Because he says they're official? Is not enough. They say he is presumed innocent, sure, and the government's going to have to carry our burden at trial, but we have enough here to get us to that trial moment. And so Trump being impeached and acquitted also does not bar the prosecution here. They say this is a straightforward reading of the law. This guy, James Wilson, who was at the Constitutional Convention, he responded in some letter. He said, though they may not be convicted on impeachment before the Senate, they may be tried by their country, and if their criminality is established, the law will punish. Okay, so he wrote something like that. This guy wrote that at the Constitutional Convention, and he was later a Supreme Court justice. He responded in an argument to this. Okay, somebody wrote that in a book back in 1976. Someone else said something in another letter, and other people wrote other letters about this. And they say Trump should be allowed to be prosecuted, saying acquittal in the Senate may reflect a technical or a procedural determination rather than a factual conclusion. And so that's true here. Some senators voted against conviction because it was a jurisdictional issue. So they're trying to diminish and minimize the actual Senate role. saying, well, actually, 50, like a majority of them voted, and some who voted against it not because he's innocent, but because they just said the Senate doesn't have jurisdiction. So they say Trump's arguments fail. First, he relies on that which is not accurate. And second, they say that Hamilton wrote some good stuff. But Hamilton stressed the function of the presidency, and Hamilton explained his take on it, and they say it's different than their take of Hamilton's take. So as we continue on, Jack Smith says, double jeopardy here also does not apply. Trump is asserting that his Senate acquittal is based on the same or the closely related conduct. But they say not so. They say the single article of impeachment came in, and they alleged incitement of insurrection. And so they're giving us the actual language from the impeachment. And they said, well, the most analogous federal statute is 2383, which is incitement to insurrection. But they say incitement requires proof of producing imminent lawless action. And they say Trump can't even get there. So they say the mere fact that some of the conduct is related doesn't mean that the double jeopardy clause exists, okay? So the impeachment and the acquittal was not close enough. So that doesn't really count. So we can just charge him again with separate conduct for the same event, like they're both January 6 events, and it doesn't count. And so Jack Smith, in all of that nonsense, he says, for the foregoing reasons, the court should affirm Judge Chutkan's order denying Trump's motion to dismiss this case. And we also would really like it if you would expedite this, please. Like, can you go fast, please? Go very fast. Including why imperative public importance and prompt resolution of this case before the election, because this is what it's all about. We respectfully request the court issue the mandate and issue the appropriate remedies. Signed by James Pierce, assistant to the illegally constituted special counsel's office. Also, Molly's here, highlighter girl, and Jack Smith, and a bunch of other people. Very important filing, my friends. I don't think it's that good. I think that what they're talking about is basically solved with a very simple impeachment process. I don't know what's so complicated about that. Okay, just impeach the person. If they committed a serious crime, impeach them, convict them, and it's over. Then it's free and fair game. Go hog wild. But then it's not political. I don't know what's so complicated about that for them, other than it shatters their entire strategy, because that means they're done with Trump. So who is one of the witnesses who may or may not be called to testify? We don't know. We don't even have a witness list from the DOJ. They said it's a big one. But this guy was one of the Capitol Hill polices who was there, one of the officers. And he showed up on MSNBC's hit show called Inside Jen Psaki, where she interviews a bunch of these people. And guess what? He's got a new book out. What's inside? Well, let's listen.
Harry Dunn, thank you for taking the time to sit down with me today. And congratulations on being an author.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wanted to ask, you're so candid about your level of fear, your level of trauma that you experienced on January 6th and in the weeks and months afterward. Why did you decide to write the book, and what do you want people to take away from it?
I've been telling my story from day one, and one of the things I've always said is everybody has a story from that day. This is my story. I don't pretend to speak for the Capitol Police. I don't speak for individual officers, Americans. This is me. It's important, especially in this day and age, so many people are trying to whitewash what happened, and they want silence, and silence actually helps them win, them meaning the people who are trying to rewrite what happened. And I can't let that happen. Everybody has a role, and I believe this is part of my role just by telling my story.
Harry Dunn.
Yeah, you do have a role, and you are telling your story, aren't you? And so his book, Standing My Ground, is now out. And I don't actually think he said much of anything other than other people are trying to whitewash the story, and he's telling his story, but it's not Capitol Hill's story. It's not anybody else's story. It's just my story. And he wrote a book, and he's on Inside Jen Psaki show. So that's interesting, and I don't know what's in the book, but I actually do appreciate that these people are writing books. Hopefully there's something useful in there so that we can compare and contrast it to any trial testimony that's been taking place as the cases continue to unwind, as these people continue to tell their story all over MSNBC and the other propaganda channels. So that's him. Now, elsewhere, we know that this case, the J6 case, is going to go up to the Supreme Court, no doubt. Whatever happens here at the Court of Appeals, there will be challenges to it. If it goes Trump's favor, Jack Smith will appeal it. If it goes against Trump, Trump will appeal it. And what does Raskin want to do? Wants to remove certain judges on the Supreme Court because they're very unhappy that they don't control that institution as well. So here's Raskin. He went on with this woman, and here is what he said about Judge Clarence Thomas. We know where this is going. They want to delegitimize the courts. They have long wanted to do that because Trump appointed 3 judges, and they don't like that. So they want to make the courts the enemy. When Trump gets put back on the ballot, or when they decide presidential immunity, or if these cases go away, they're going to blame the courts. They're going to try to attack the courts and use the courts as a cudgel during the next election. And here is Raskin already gearing up for the recusal fight.
Should any of the justices recuse themselves if they take this up?
Well, finally, the Supreme Court has developed what they're describing as a code of ethics. It's not binding in the sense that they're not going to anyone else. They could have gone to, for example, circuit court justices. You could have had state Supreme Court justices on a panel. But so they're deciding for themselves, again, whether they're in violation of their code of ethics. But I think
they are the Supreme Court.
Anybody looking at this in any kind of dispassionate, reasonable way would say, if your wife was involved in the big lie and claiming that Donald Trump had actually won the presidential election, had been agitating for that and participating in the events leading up to January 6th, that you shouldn't be participating.
So he should recuse himself.
He should. Oh, he absolutely should recuse himself. The question is, what do we do if he doesn't recuse himself?
That is the question, Jamie. That is the question. What are you going to do about it when he doesn't? Because he's not going to. Why would he resign? Why wouldn't Chuckin resign or recuse herself from the various cases that she's been on? Okay. Jamie Raskin wants to stop the Supreme Court because he's unhappy that the Supreme Court is not in control of the Democrats. And that's just typical from him. Now, all right, that is Jamie Raskin. So we are going to continue to cover this. What's going to happen is Donald Trump will submit his reply. We're going to have amicus briefs that are filed on this immunity issue. It's a monster issue. This is one of those issues that we're going to be following until the Supreme Court settles it. But once it gets settled, it's going to be anchored in to our judiciary for a long time. And so we are going to be here continuing to cover this, my friends. I hope you join us as we do. Thank you for subscribing. We also have right now over at the Watcher Lodge, our fitness challenge, our annual fitness challenge, first one ever. And we just launched this. And so if you go to watcherlodge.com and you click the fitness challenge button, you can join us. There is still time up until January 5th to come in and join in on the lodge. You can see I am posting my fitness challenge reports. Day 1 was on the 1st, day 2 was on the 2nd, and day 3 is going to be coming up. And so we hope you join us. Fitness challenge, a great way to do 31 days of goodness for yourself, for your health and wellness. So come check us out, watcherlodge.com. And we've got our community calendar. We're going to have fitness check-ins. So make sure that you go over to the calendar and RSVP as well for our live stream check-ins. As we get fit and as we stay connected and continuing our coverage here on all the Trump madness, we're going to be healthier than these deranged thugs. So thank you for following along, my friends. Thank you for subscribing, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, but we're not done yet here, my friends. We're jumping over down to Florida. What's up, Scott? Very nice comment coming in from Scott. Scott Z, thank you for that, Scott. We're going to hit that comment here at the end. Thank you for sending that in. I do see it. And very nice of you. Let's jump into this one in Florida. Donald Trump objects to Jack Smith's filing. Jack Smith wants to know if Donald Trump is going to be using the advice of counsel defense. This is a defense that Trump has said, you know, when I was taking some of these actions in Florida with some of these so-called classified documents, I was listening to my lawyers that they said to me that they were my documents, that I had physical rights to them because I was, you know, the president and I have the opinion clause and all of those things under the Constitution. And Jack says, well, if you were relying on your lawyers, Well, let me see. Let me see your emails. Let me see the letters that they sent over to you. And we need to see those as part of our discovery before you can use that defense at trial. And so Jack Smith sent that over to Judge Cannon. Remember, we're in Florida on the classified documents case. And now Trump has submitted his response. And this is his objection. He says, Judge Cannon, West Palm Beach Division in Florida, in the case of USA and the deranged thugs, illegitimate Jack Smith and others, against Trump, Walt, and Carlos, Trump and his defense respond. They say, all right, look, President Trump is respectfully submitting this motion in opposition to Jack Smith, saying Jack Smith's so-called special counsel's office, illegitimate, has repeatedly demanded deadlines in this case that are detached from reality and from practice. And this motion is no different. The 60 days requested in the motion would give Jack's office more time to, quote, investigate on advice of counsel defense than their office gave to President Trump to review 1.3 million pages of discovery and to file our motions. See how that is? So they say, wow, that's interesting. So Jack Smith wants Jack Smith to have 60 days to investigate this, but they didn't even give us 60 days for 1 million pages of materials. That's weird. So that's interesting that he wants all that time for him, but we don't get any time. It says the court rejected Jack Smith's earlier unjust proposal, and the same result is appropriate here. This motion is not supported by any rule of criminal procedure that Jack has submitted, and several courts have already rejected similar requests for advance notice of our trial defenses. Right? They say, you don't get this. They say, here, Judge Cannon, not a single case that was cited by illegitimate Jack's office involved the amount of advance notice that they are seeking. And they say there's deep irony in the government's invocation of, quote, fairness and efficiency. They keep talking about this. Oh, Your Honor, it's going to be fair and efficient if you tell us all of Trump's defenses. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be very efficient for you. Now, prior to filing this indictment and before presenting evidence to a grand jury, Trump's defense says that Jack Smith unlawfully violated Trump's attorney-client privilege and he improperly forced attorneys to testify before a grand jury in D.C. That is good. Now, we will further address that misconduct in pretrial motions. Yes, that's coming down the pike, my friend, so get ready for that one. And that's probably Stanley Woodward, who is Carlos's lawyer. I'm sorry, he's Walt's lawyer. Meaning, is that right? Did he testify in front of a grand jury? Maybe it was not him. Maybe it was, I don't know who that was. Who is that? What attorney was forced to testify? I think there was rumors that Meadows was. So that's coming. Anyways, so Trump's defense is saying another motion is coming, and that's prosecutorial misconduct motion. Those are our favorite motions. We love those. Now, however, given the unconstitutional steps, they say we'll deal with that later. Now, given the unconstitutional steps that the office took to invade President Trump's privilege before bringing this politically motivated case, it was irresponsible for the office to suggest in the motion that, one, they faced the risk of an ambush about legal advice. We're going to be ambushed if we don't know Trump's defenses. Womp. And President Trump should be required to make a decision regarding a privilege waiver before the court addresses the office's pre-indictment abuse of his privilege. So they want Trump to disclose his defense. Now, Trump's team says, look, the motion also ignores, conveniently, the Supreme Court and their emphasis on the need for reciprocity in pretrial discovery, which is lacking here. There are many ongoing discovery deficiencies that are going to be the subject of extensive litigation early next year. And if this case survives these pretrial motions, which they're going to be dumping as well, the defense disclosures will likely be required in connection to SIPA. And we've got Section 5 stuff and other things. And by the way, this is going to amplify the imbalance in a way that highlights the unjust nature of this request. In other words, Trump is saying this discovery, deadline, timeline, request from the government, the way it's being structured is currently being very adversarial to us. And if you grant this additional request for Jack Smith, like we're already going to litigate this, and this, and this, and now he's asking for this, like if you give him that as well, you're just going to keep adding to this already insane balance that is being weighed against Trump. For all these reasons, the court should deny his motion as premature and address any requests for the notice of Trump's defenses until after the pretrial motions are resolved, until we have had an opportunity to review all of their disclosures. We don't even have exhibits or a witness list that I've been waiting to see. Okay, how many people are on it? Are they going to show us it? And disclosures pursuant, it's about January 6th, pursuant to the Jenks Act and Giglio. Like, are we going to see any witness list from anybody? It can be part of disclosure. It's going to be part of the protective order. We'll see. Actually, this is the documents case. This is the classified documents case. I'm thinking about January 6th because we were just in Chutkan's case. But this is the documents case. So this should be a smaller list theoretically. But are they going to SEPA it? Are we going to see any of it? Probably not. Now, applicable law, they say here, constitutional due process forbids compelling a criminal defendant to disclose things that they're not required to disclose. Jack Smith here is urging Judge Cannon to exercise her inherent authority to impose notice and disclosure requirements on Trump that are not even part of the rules. Saying inherent authority, because Jack Smith is whining about this, is not a basis for shifting the burden to Trump. You don't automatically get to know his defenses now because you're curious and it's about court efficiency. They say here, nor does the inherent authority permit unreasonable restrictions on Trump's ability to prepare his own defenses. And so based on principles, courts in this district and elsewhere have already rejected the government's demands for pre-trial notice about their defenses. Here are a couple cases. And these cases don't look like they were used with ChatGPT or Bard like Michael Cohen did. Order on a motion to compel. This one came out from the Southern District of Florida, 2022. This one, Alessa, case called Ray. Case called Order Denying Motion to Compel Disclosure. That was also from the Southern District of Florida. So we got some good Southern District of Florida cases right there, right on point. Here's another one, Southern District of Florida. Here's this one, Southern District of Florida, rejecting the prosecution's novel arguments. Similarly here, Florida, 2008. That one's from Minnesota, 2007. They put that one at the end. Eastern District of Louisiana, they put that one at the end, okay? Here, now it should go without saying that these cases are relevant. And so now, Jack Smith's requests are not needed. 60 days of notice is not fair, okay? No principle of fairness or efficiency that came from Jack's office would justify requiring Trump to waive his attorney-client privilege 60 days before trial. That's nuts, they say. Trump is also going to demonstrate through further motions that Jack Smith's office, oh my goodness, has already unlawfully invaded his attorney-client privilege anyways. And he's already compelled his lawyers to testify before a grand jury in D.C. You don't need to see what Trump has been talking to his lawyers about because you already invaded that relationship. Now, in the motion, they say Jack Smith curiously ignores this fact, and he fails to inform the court that they have much more information about legal advice that was provided to Trump than in a typical case. They've already got it. They spied on his campaign. Now they're spying on his legal team. It is therefore disingenuous for Jack Smith, illegitimate, to raise the specter of so-called an ambush. You guys already got everything. So in light of this unconstitutional pre-indictment access to Trump's legal advice, they say it's equally disingenuous for Jack Smith to claim that they need 60 days. When Trump said that I need additional time to develop our defenses, deranged thugs, they suggested that the available defenses were limited and straightforward. They says, well, you guys don't really need that much time because you don't have many defenses. They say now they're seeking to improperly infiltrate Trump's team for a second time, and their office falsely claims that it needs a significant pretrial notice to go investigate it. Right. Trump's defense continues, telling us that they're voluminous and their ongoing productions, all of their discovery, it undercuts their needs. They say the unusually high volume of unclassified and classified discovery in this complex case includes nearly 1.3 million pages of unclassified materials and purportedly 5,500 pages of classified documents. We got a new batch of this stuff on December 6th. And because we have all of this, it requires that Trump need as much time to develop his defenses as possible. And so Trump cannot be required to determine whether and to what extent he can waive his rights when he's still reading 1.3 million pages of highlighted material. Now, they say, although there's no requirement that Trump provide notice of this case, they say every existing requirement that a defendant provide notice mandates the government's reciprocity. They say, look, the special counsel's office is not in compliance with its discovery. The court correctly observed in prior filings that the parties are at odds on significant issues about discoverable information, and that the judge is going to have to step in. We're going to need judicial intervention from Cannon to come in and explain this. Now, some of these disagreements are about Rule 16 and Brady and other disputes from Jenks and Giglio obligations, which are all disclosure stuff. So no deadline for defense disclosures should be set until these disputes are resolved. So Trump says, look, I can't even tell you whether I used advice of counsel defense or whether I'm going to use that because I haven't even seen what the evidence is against me. Like if you say that I did something in the evidence, Trump did this. You might say, well, I've got a good explanation for that because this lawyer said that I could do that. So I got to see what you are alleging before I can respond to that. Makes sense. Now, the anticipated litigation also exacerbates the lack of reciprocity. So through the SIPA process, Jack Smith is going to be saying Trump is not entitled to materials under classified protective rules. And here they say also Jack Smith has bad case law. Okay, his cases are terrible. He should have just used, Google Bard like Michael Cohen for all we care. You've got these cases, District Court of DC, Southern District of Florida here, Eastern District of Virginia. We've got this one from Southern District of Florida, another Southern District of Florida. And saying, hey, Judge Cannon, look, they don't even need to look outside of other cases. You also issued an order. In Carver, you said that there were unreasonable scheduling demands in a prior filing from Jack Smith's office, saying the June 1 order that required advice of counsel disclosures in Carver was entered 15 months after the first defendant in the case was arrested. That's far more time than Trump was given in discovery. That was 5 defendants, and it was even more complex. Here, the office is only seeking pretrial notice from Trump. In Carver, Your Honor, director disclosures and other witness lists and so on. And in this case, this was an odd choice. He's going through the cases one by one. This case demonstrates the efforts of Jack Smith to invade Trump's privilege. And so Todd Blanche is writing, along with Christopher Keese, Trump's defense team, saying, for the foregoing reasons, Judge Cannon in Florida, President Trump respectfully submits that the court should deny the motion as premature and address any request for notice after the pretrial motions are resolved. So basically saying not now. Jack Smith has not even disclosed the evidence to us. And what I like about this filing, my friends, is that we're going to get some prosecutorial misconduct filings any day now. And we are excited about those. So that will be dropping soon. Prosecutorial misconduct, what Trump lawyers testified in DC and which are going to be the basis of this misconduct claim. But that will be coming in West Palm Beach, Florida, any minute now. Now, we know these documents allegedly are about national security. And so this guy is showing up, having conversations with mainstream Collins, saying that Trump is going to wreck the country. This guy apparently is called Mark Esper, former Trump defense secretary. And he says that when Trump wins, it's going to be all about loyalty to Trump.
He is back in the Oval Office. Do you ever think about who he might pick to take the job that you had, defense secretary? I mean, what are your biggest concerns about that?
Well, I think that one of the biggest lessons he took out of his last year in office, is that you have to pick the right people. And for him, the litmus test will be about loyalty. Number one, number two, and number three. Competence will probably be number four. And so I think that's going to be the litmus test for anybody he brings into his administration. He's not going to want people who push back. He's not going to want people who challenge his assumptions or his views or his ideas. He's going to want people to do what he wants. And that was apparent to me at the time and others since, because he's already talked about things he wants to do. There were some of the things he talked about doing in the first term that we were able to push him off of. But look, that's my biggest concern, is who he will put into office.
Not this time, not pushing him off again, my friend. We learned our lesson this time. And so guys like Mark Esper getting a little bit nervous there, that saying people are going to be loyal. You know, they pushed Trump off of his agenda by their own admission, which is not what you're supposed to do when you are serving at the pleasure of the president. You're supposed to enact the agenda, not enact your agenda, Mark. So they're getting nervous about it. Of course, Donald Trump has some fun motions coming, prosecutorial misconduct coming down the pike for Jack Smith. We're excited about that. We'll be here continuing to cover, my friends. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. Thanks for checking out thewatcherlodge.com. We've got our new fitness challenge available there, watcherlodge.com. Still time to sign up to join us. We got a bunch of people who are coming in here and dropping their daily victories from our fitness challenge. I'm posting my reports and our fitness updates here, watcherlodge.com. Community calendar has some events and some live streams as we build this platform out. We're excited to share with you some of the stuff we're working on. So check us out, watcherlodge.com. And we'll be here, my friends, covering the Trump saga as it continues, and we'll be a little bit healthier as we do. So thanks for subscribing, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here on the next one. All right, and we've got one final segment on the day before we jump in and hear from you. And this one is an interesting one. 3 ex-Trump aides who have developed serious cases of TDS have now launched a new attack, and they're under attack because they're attacking Trump. They say that Trump is disqualified and that American democracy is at stake. And so you can see here these 3 TDS Avengers joining forces under the banner of Liz Cheney to fight against Trump. We know them. Alyssa Farah Griffin is this woman right here on our right. She was the former press secretary to Mike Pence, special assistant to Donald Trump. And she is somebody who has some qualifications. I think she was actually a director level at one point in the Trump White House. We're also familiar with the number 2 here in the middle. That's Cassidy Hutchinson, clavicle girl. You remember her from the January 6th testimony where Liz Cheney had her stand up there and say that allegedly she heard a story from the story, but allegedly Trump reached across the aisle and grabbed the clavicle of the Secret Service driver when the Capitol situation was unfolding, and grabbed him by the clavicle. No. And he said, really? Is that something that happened? And there's like 2 levels of hearsay removed. Liz Cheney brought her in and had her tell her story. And then, of course, Deputy Press Secretary is this woman. Her name is Sarah Matthews. And so all of them join hands, join their TDS arranged together, unite. And then they came out and delivered this presentation. We'll go through it. Now, they're joined by 2 other individuals. Jena Griswold, Colorado Secretary of State. She says, I'm under attack too. And so did Shenna Bellows. Everybody's under attack now. It's amazing. And then we'll have a little palate cleanser with Byron Donalds here, who's going to tell us who these people are that we're actually dealing with. And so this is the story of these 3 TDSers who are now on a mission to communicate what's happening to all of us in America.
Donald Trump became president again, what would a second Trump term look like? fundamentally, a second Trump term could mean the end of American democracy as we know it. And I don't say that lightly. We all witnessed him trying to steal a democratic election before and going to historic and unconstitutional lengths to do so. And that just shows that he's willing to basically break every barrier to get into power and to stay into power. But also,
Okay, so all platitudes. I don't know what she just said there. Undermine American democracy, seriously, wreck America. Oh, like, what does that mean? And by the way, I want to just pause on this. And let's not forget how thorough the Democrats are. Okay, they're very thorough. They have entire teams of people that are working on campaigns, just like a company runs campaigns, right? Coca-Cola runs a winter campaign. It's Christmas. Here's Kris Kringle, right? All of it. Always campaigns. These are political campaigns. And so I would imagine that this is an effort that has been focus grouped and tested, and that they have been brought together under the purview of some person who's organizing a lot of this stuff. Like there's a marketing person who set this up with ABC. There's a bunch of stories about these three ex-Trump aides. You know, they've all got their books out and also on and so forth. So it's a highly crafted message. And we know that what they have probably identified is that Trump has a problem, probably with white women. And so that's what we have here, is this ensemble that comes together and then is going to lecture us, so that big parts of the country can identify with them. You know, oh my gosh, American democracy under attack, man. All crafted, all scripted, all pure propaganda. And as we listen, do they say anything? Do they say anything substantively, like new information, new facts? Are there new concerns? I'm concerned that Trump will do this. Or is it all literal just platitudes as part of a propaganda piece in the run-up during election season, right? It's just a new hit that they are orchestrating. Kind of feels that way to me. Let's see.
I'm very concerned about what the term would actually look like.
Yeah, like what?
We don't need to speculate.
Like what? Like what? Give us some examples. I want you to speculate. What do you think?
What a second Trump term would look like, because we already saw it play out. To
What?
this day, he still doubles down on the fact that he thinks that the election was stolen and fraudulent.
It was.
And
It was. Millions of Americans do. In fact, the number is growing. You're on the wrong side. The trend is going the opposite direction. In fact, there are fewer of people like you who think that way than there are of us, than there were last year. Okay, so it's going down. The trajectory is going down. You're in a diminishing breed.
And then his rhetoric has just gotten increasingly erratic. I mean, he has literally called for things like doing away with parts of the Constitution,
What
wanting to weaponize the DOJ.
What part of the Constitution? What did he want to say specifically? Did he say we just want to evaporate what, the 19th Amendment?
To enact revenge on his political enemies. The fact that he feels
That's what your side is doing. Okay, again, I'm going to try to shut up for a minute.
that he needs to lean into being a dictator alone shows that he is a weak and feeble man who has no sense of character and integrity and has no sense of leadership.
Everyone who is in the West
So it sounds like a bunch of just angry like exes. Here, let's listen.
Wing, and frankly, a lot of cabinet secretaries, they know how dangerous Trump is. People who I have the deepest level of respect for, like my former boss, Vice President Mike Pence, he's seen more than any of us have seen. He knows more than any of us know. And I would just hope in this moment when we are less than a year out from, or basically a year out from the election, that he would think about speaking out more forcefully just about the unfitness of Donald Trump. This is not about politics. It's not about policy. It is about the character of the man who's the leader of the free world.
Yeah. They're a bunch of ex-Trump aides, and they're sounding like just like a bunch of exes, right? Just like literally like they are. Ex-Trump aides, just whiny exes who are just upset with a man who may have left them behind in the wind.
Even now, even 3 years later, almost, there are many that haven't come out who know exactly what you all know or know more.
I think it's really easy to paint all of these Republicans with a broad brush and say that
Call them
they're
extreme
doing
MAGA?
it for their own personal ambitions, which I think is a large majority of them. But I think another thing that we have to consider as a factor is that a lot of these people won't come forward even if privately they'll acknowledge that Trump is unfit or will privately acknowledge that the 2020 election wasn't stolen. It's because they know that they will face death threats, that their families will face death threats. I knew that coming forward and speaking out against Donald Trump, I could potentially face security threats or death threats.
By the way, that's already illegal. Okay, it's already illegal. I do not condone any of that. Why? Let me play this.
Online harassment, despite all the personal sacrifice, I knew that ultimately it was the right thing to do. And so I just would encourage.
You're on ABC right now. Okay, nobody knew who you were until you started speaking out like this. You were just unknown, literally unknown. A deputy press secretary. Now you're on ABC. Now you're with these two other Avengers. You're like literally seeking the spotlight because you want to speak out.
Others to come forward because
okay, there it is.
We're running out of time in order to try to stop Trump from being in the Oval Office again.
His campaign theme is retribution. I mean, this is the centerpiece of his campaign. He says, "I am your retribution." This is a tough question, but let me ask each of you: are you worried that you will face that retribution if he comes back in?
It is a very real concern. I've met with former.
Did you see them all smile? What was that? What was that reaction? And there was a hard cut right there. See that hard cut? So watch them all smile. They all kind of laugh. And then there's a hard cut. Watch their faces. Okay, so watch the hard cut. The next frame that's a totally different moment. You see that? Like their faces are all gone. So it's a whole different point that they're making. So I don't know what, I don't know what that was about, but it was a weird reaction. Are you all going to die? Yeah, definitely.
If he comes back in.
It is a very real concern. I've met with former cabinet secretaries very recently who were also on this, potential theoretical list, and they're worried about it. Listen, I'll say this with Donald Trump is, what scares me as much as him and his retribution is the almost cult-like following he has over his most diehard supporters.
That's rude.
The threats, the harassment, the death threats that you get when he targets you, and he's deliberate in targeting, is really horrifying and has no place in our American discourse. And it's unlike anything I've seen in the decades plus I've been in politics.
Okay, so again, she's mad because she's getting some bad comments or something like that. Again, I don't endorse any of that. I think it's bad. Nobody should get comments like that. And I doubt that she is too.
I'm less worried for any personal aspect for me,
of
but
course.
It is, he knows how to use government better this time. He can put in diehard loyalists who can weaponize every level of government.
Perfect.
Against
just like
his
you guys
detractors,
did.
against the American
Perfect.
people, against
Good.
the media.
Right on.
It's almost too scary to fully wrap your head around what it could look like.
Yeah.
The American people and people in general have short memories, and so they might forget the chaos of the Trump years. And also, they might not just be paying attention to what he's saying.
Like we didn't have people falling out of airplanes in Afghanistan. We didn't have a new war in Ukraine and another one bubbling up in Israel. We didn't have an open border with 300,000 people coming across. They're demented. These people are just totally out of touch.
Now, and the threat to democracy that exists. And so
platitudes.
It does really concern me if he makes it to a general that he could win. And
he's gonna.
I'm still hopeful that we can defeat him in the primary, but we're running out of time.
Our singular focus needs to be, if he is the nominee, on making sure that he is not elected the president again next November.
Even if that means electing a Democrat.
It's really disappointing because I look at these options and I'm upset with them. But at the end of the day, I trust one person with our government and democracy than I do the other. And so I've never voted for a Democrat in my life, but I think that in this next election, I would put policy aside and choose democracy.
Right now, there's a large portion of the population that's not recognizing their mistakes, that's not working to continue to better our country. And right now, we're completely splitting down the middle. On one side, that's the truth, and that is reality. And the other side is propaganda and lies.
Okay.
This is a fundamental election to continue to safeguard our institutions and our constitutional republic. But if we crumble as a nation, we're setting the example for generations to come, not only in the United States, but on the global stage, that democracy is an experiment.
It's just incredible.
It's not guaranteed. We're extremely fragile as a country, and so is the democratic experiment.
Pretty good. She's a bunch of gobbledygook, right? Has said nothing. It's just platitude after platitude after platitude. Probably got flashcards and just, going through them one after. Danger to our democracy. At a time like this, at a stake we've never seen before. Over and over. It's really bad. Alyssa, is by far the best communicator. You know, she's the one who's got the most credentials and the most experience. Obviously, a much better communicator. Clavicle Girl is still working on it, and this other woman, I don't know if she has a book out or probably working on a book, but we got the 3 TDS Democrat Avengers who they look like a focus group, like it's like a boy band, you know, that they just assembled, like the Spice Girls. Yeah, maybe that's one. Okay, so the Democratic Spice Girls are here to stop Trump, and they don't really say much of anything, kind of like the Spice Girls. So we've got others. That's not just them. Other ladies are under attack from Trump and the MAGA people. This is Jena Griswold. Jena Griswold, as we know, is in Colorado. She disenfranchised the entire state of Colorado by, or wants to, working very hard to do it. But of course, the Supreme Court in Colorado has put a stay on it pending the Supreme Court. So we'll see what ultimately happens. But she is a little ballot censor. She wants, you know, a little tyrant. She wants to remove her political opponents from the board because she thinks that he's an insurrectionist. And she's also under attack for this type of behavior, for this type of insurrectionary language. This is what she said when she showed up on MSNBC.
Thanks for having me on, Stephen. I think in Maine, the Secretary of State makes determinations like this. By the way, in Colorado, I would also be in the place of making the determination if a lawsuit wasn't filed so early. But in Maine, I think Shenna Bellows.
I could have done this too, but I couldn't.
Made the right decision in agreement with the Colorado Supreme Court. Donald Trump incited an insurrection to try to steal the presidency from the American people. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment makes it very clear that elected officials can't do that and then serve in office again. And I don't believe there should be some loophole in the Constitution that puts only Donald Trump above the law and Constitution.
Look at her eyes. Watch this woman's eyes.
When he incites rebellion or incites an insurrection. The other thing I would say is I do think Secretary Bellows is brave and courageous. She is the first individual by herself having to make this decision. And we are acutely aware of the threat environment that we work in. So I commend her.
The threat environment that we work in. Does she think she's in Fallujah or Joe Biden's Afghanistan?
For her actions, and we'll see how the litigation inevitably plays out in the state of Maine.
Okay, so that is who's in charge of disenfranchising millions of people in Colorado. Now she's under attack along with the Spice Girls. Guess who else is under attack? Shenna Bellows, who is here. And this is what she said when she disenfranchised her state, okay? Because these people are just they're having such a difficult time here living with their tyrannical ways. They brought her on CNN, and this guy said, you know, I voted to impeach Donald Trump, but I do not believe he should be, and I do not believe he should be reelected. But Congressman Jared Golden, but said he should still be on the ballot until he's actually been convicted of something and removed. And so here's this woman. She's also under attack, operating under threat levels or whatever. Here's what she sounds like.
I reviewed Section 3 of the 14th Amendment very carefully and determined that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment does not say conviction, it says engage. And let's go back and keep in mind that the events of January 6, 2021 were unprecedented and tragic. This was an attack not only on the Capitol and the government officials, the former vice president, members of Congress, but an attack on the rule of law. And the weight of evidence that I reviewed indicated that it was in fact an insurrection, and Mr. Trump engaged in that insurrection under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment.
Are you concerned about the fallout?
I will always implement what the court decides. And this type of
You made the decision, lady.
proceeding is not unusual as part of my duties in Maine under Maine election law. In 2022, for example, I held a similar hearing on the qualifications of a district attorney candidate, found him unqualified. That was appealed. The court upheld my ruling. I mentioned Mr. Chris Christie just last week, a Superior Court finding that I had made the right decision in barring him from the ballot under Maine law. But I will always uphold what.
That's because he didn't qualify, not because you removed him under the 14th Amendment in some weird little 2-hour hearing you had.
The court does, and it's part of the job of being Secretary of State. Should the U.S. Supreme Court rule that Mr. Trump be on the ballot, I will in fact place him on the ballot. It's part of why I suspended the effect of my decision until the courts can act. So no ballots are being printed until that Superior Court decision or Supreme Court decision might come down. Although we're looking at a very tight time frame.
Yeah. You want him removed, and you've issued the order to make it happen. You're just waiting on the courts to settle it for you. So, all right, another one under attack. You can see they're all under attack as they all are literally trying to get rid of their political opponents in America, doing it in the name of democracy. But Byron Donalds, he knows exactly who these people are. He's going to describe them here to us. He says, look, rank and file Democrats, okay? You have people in your party who are mental cases. They are anti-democratic radicals. They don't believe in the rule of law or justice at all. They don't believe in the will of the people and vote at the ballot office. They're only there caring about their agenda, and they're destroying America. Stop supporting them for the love of all. This is Byron Donalds.
It's very anti-democratic. Anybody that says otherwise is a fool and is lying to the American people. I want to talk to Democrat voters for a moment. You rank and file Democrat voters, you work hard, you live life, you're not really political. You have people in your party who are radicals, who are anti-democratic. They don't believe in the will of the people. They don't believe in votes in the ballot box, legitimate ones. They don't even believe in the rule of law and actually following the rule of law. They only care about their agenda. You got to stop voting for these people because they are the ones who are destroying America's republic. They are the ones who are threats to our democracy.
Amen, Byron. Thank you for saying that. He's absolutely right about it. Lot of mental whack jobs over there. We just talked about 4 of them, as you can see. And they all kind of have a similar vibe, a similar cadence to them. You know, it's like, oh gosh, you couldn't assemble them, better if you tried. So the TDS Avengers, the TDS, I think Spice Girls is a really a better one, which we'll keep with that one. So they're out in full force. There's going to be a lot more of them. I think this is being orchestrated. They just pick them out. They're maturing them, getting them book deals. And they're going to be used, obviously, throughout the next election season to try to stop Trump and to try to create some energy in this demographic. Now, we'll be here continuing to cover, my friends. Thank you for subscribing as we do. Thanks for checking out watcherlodge.com to see what we're building over there. Also, our website, robertgovea.com. You can sign up for the daily newsletter. All the PDFs that we talk about on the show are there as well. And we'll look forward to seeing you back there and back here on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, that is it for us on the day. We covered some good ground. Let's hear from you. We got Trump's ex-aides, who are acting like exes for sure, like ex-aides, says Trump objects to the advice of counsel demands from Jack Smith's, and Jack Smith is also making his argument in this, what I say is an historic issue here, this reply brief over immunity. Jack Smith submitted his filing. Now, let's hear from you before we head on over to our members-only after party at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're going to hang out with our membos only. If you're a YouTube member, don't forget to join us on the private Telegram group. And so members on YouTube, go to the community tab section, scroll down, grab the Telegram link, and that's where the after party will be for you. But this is from Glocky McGlockface in the house. Says, Rob, I would want you and the viewers to give you 1:40 of your life to what an Obama supporter asks Obama about free and fair elections, and this is his response. Let me see if I can come back to that, Glocky. We'll see if we got time. But thank you for it. And that's an Obama link. Obama in 2008 warns politicians monkeyed around with the elections. We'll see if we got time for it. This old guy's here says Bob Goldbar Menendez is in the house, was charged with accepting bribes in a superseding indictment. Well, that sounds about right. I mean, was it new charges? Or was it just an expansion of the charges from this old guy? We'll have to take a look. Glocky McGlockface says, Rob, your common sense is confusing Chuck and Nancy. Yeah, they do definitely look confused. They look interesting there. STFU says, why do all these anti-Trump women have those crazy ultra-medicated mom eyes? Did you see that one from Colorado? Jena? Man, she looked like, could you imagine, like, anyways, it's like they're all fanatical henchmen from a religious cult. Yeah, it's pretty much the same. And they all talk the same language too. Like, hey, good morning. Are you under attack today? Yes, I'm under attack big time. Oh, really? How attacky are you feeling? I don't know. It's like a level 5 attack today. Wow, that's pretty hard. I'm feeling like a level 3. And they're all talking about democracy and insurrection all the time, 24/7. It's wild. 1917 Beamer says the Capitol police officer got deposed and he wasn't even anywhere near the so-called violence. That's probably why he didn't want to talk about it. Probably why he's talking about his story, whatever. It's like, whatever. It was a tragic day when I was in the other zip code. Anyway, Zulu's here, bringing out this quote: "Justice delayed is justice denied." And yeah, that's another thing. It's the other side of the law. The other side of the law is that they just hold you indefinitely without charges, like they did with Edmond Dantes in the Count of Monte Cristo. So, for example, like you could say that justice delayed is justice denied, like in the case of the J6ers, for example. Like there's still hundreds of people sitting around rotting in the gulags. And I think it's about 100 plus, who are still sitting there. And, lots of discovery delays, lots of, delay. So sure, it's like the J6, it's about finding balance is really the answer. And Zulu says Americans want a swift accounting for Trump's crimes. And by the way, I would also like a swift accounting. I think that there should be an accounting for everything that the government did. Like, for example, why did they reject the National Guard on May 4th, Muriel Bowser? Why did the House Sergeant at Arms refuse to answer Stephen Sund's phone calls, who was the Capitol Hill Chief of Police, many times? Why was Nancy Pelosi there with her granddaughter filming the whole thing? All those things. Like 44,000 hours of footage. We'd like all that released. So I actually agree with you, Zulu. I would like an accounting of our rotten government. We got this one from Tam is here. And Glocky. Glocky says, you don't say. Words like treason come to mind when I see articles like this. Ex-CIA analyst, confident intel community will try to interfere against Trump in the 2024 election. Well, I'll tell you this, my friends. I am not ex-CIA, and I'm not even an analyst, but I can tell you right now, they're already interfering in the election in 2024. I'm imagining the intelligence community is doing it. I know they have permission to do it. I know the DOJ is doing it. There's election interference happening right now. It's right now. He's been indicted 4 times. So that's, pretty obvious to me. And the FBI is responsible for those investigations. So obviously, and it's no criticism of that analyst. I'm sure he's right, but I'm just saying, oh, true. It sounds obvious to me. Tam is here, says Destiny wants you to invite you on his show to debate him on Trump indictments. He's preparing for a debate with Alex Jones and Glenn Greenwald coming up on January 6th. Sounds nice. I haven't heard from him. So when I do, we'll see what to do about that. But thank you for that, Tam. We've got this one from Chubby Stubby. Says, I can't believe you're threatening democracy by questioning the almighty yet deranged and thuggish Jack Smith. Clearly, his word is law. He keeps telling us he doesn't have much justifications for things in his filings, but that's what he keeps saying. Jal Mack is here on the locals. Says they're not pleading to give Trump immunity. It should be clear if the immunity is constitutional or not. Jack the Whack Job Smith is really stretching with the dramatics. It's unicorn law. Yeah, I agree with that, right? So exactly right. So I think Jal Mack, you're right about this. It's not like Trump is saying, hey, let's invent this new immunity and just give it to me. It's whether this is something that exists. It's now just being tested in law. And I think it exists. And Jack's justification for why it doesn't is not convincing. Wendy K says, Jack is presenting an argument that can be used to defend Biden. Go back to page 28 and think that this is Biden's DOJ. Case number 233228 from Wendy K, with a good suggestion to go back to that page. Wendy says, think about the Clintons, Obamas, the Bushes. This is stuff that they're going to bring back up in 2025 when they are all prosecuted. Put a pin in it. I bet you. Page 43, 23, 32, 28 from Wendy K in the house. We got this one from Lady Ice. Says, so in other words, this is what Biden is presently doing based on the standard protocol of accusing the opposition of the very crimes you are in fact committing yourself. Yeah, it's projection. They're always projecting. If Donald Trump has his way, he could weaponize the DOJ. Have you been alive for the last couple of years? Because that's what you're doing. All right, thank you, Lady Ice. We got Pinochet's helicopter tours. Says the Godfather christening scene inspired Order 66. Is that true? Is that true? I didn't know that. That's an interesting one from Pinochet's helicopter tour. Okay. We got this one. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. So Air Force vet says, how can Trump have an insurrection against himself? Well, it's a good question. You have to ask Jack. It says an insurrection is an armed rebellion against an established government. Trump was the established government. Also, memorabilia fund. Thank you for that. So we're establishing a memorabilia fund here on this channel. Loosely, okay, not legally speaking. It's not like in a form of fund. But it would be very nice to have enough funding one day to be able to purchase a revolver that we were watching as a members-only community. It was Teddy Roosevelt's revolver. And it only went for $1.2 million. That's it. So we started a memorabilia fund. We're going to get it one day. Thank you, Air Force vet, for that. Yeah, I think they were saying, Trump was trying to interfere with the next incoming administration, and that was the ultimate insurrection, that he was acquitted on. So thanks for the dono, my friend, and thanks for being here, Air Force vet in the house. We got Dolphin Fan is the man bringing in some new membos for us. What's up, Dolphin? Thanks for bringing in 5 membos, including Schechter is here. Liquid Rock Aquatics is here. Pan-seared ribeye. We got Kanani's here. Kanani M. And Doctor Who is also in the house, courtesy of Dolphin Fan is the man, bringing in 5 new membos in the house. And Happy New Year to you, Dolphin. Good to see you. And Happy New Year to all you, my friends. Scott, same to you. Scott Z's here. Says, where Jack Smith starts down his parade of horrors, he does not use obstruction of justice in the selling nuclear secrets. You're right. Yeah, and that's interesting because he charged him in Florida for that, theoretically. Remember that? Trump had nuclear secrets down there at Mar-a-Lago. Really, did he? The Biden allegations are serious, and it shows the DOJ can't independently hit POTUS, per as double jeopardy exists and misconduct, from Scott Z. in the house. Scott, thank you for the very generous dono on this. And yeah, it's an interesting point. I've been thinking a lot about that obstruction. So remember, Trump had so-called classified documents. Got it. So did Hillary Clinton. She destroyed hers. Joe Biden had his. He presumably didn't destroy them, but we don't know if Hunter took some, away or whatever. Who knows what happened to them is the point. He had them for who knows how long. And Joe was not the president. Neither was Hillary Clinton. So the president has the opinion clause power, which is in the Constitution, which says that it's his. So as I said, if NARA can make Trump declassify them, or if the FBI can say, actually, those are our documents, you're obstructing us, our documents. No, he is not. They are legitimately, literally his under the opinion clause power, very little litigated issue, but I hope it is in this case in Florida. Because literally the president has the right to demand the opinions of his agencies. He gets to establish all the different offices. He gets to have the opinion of his offices. And so they can deliver them to him. And those were Trump's, and he can do whatever the hell he wants with those. So they're his indefinitely. And I think that is, I hope we see something about that filed in the Florida cases once it's ripe. Thank you, Scott, for the very nice dono for sending that one in. Ian's over on Locals says, amazing. Jack Smith is mentioning murder in his submission when that is one of the big ones people discuss in relation to charging Obama. Good one. Ian Mack in the house. I didn't even catch that, but you're right. For example, when he murdered those 2 U.S. citizens in those drone strikes without any due process at all. Trump didn't murder anybody. Trump said some things about a rigged election. Maybe Obama should be charged. B.H. Williams. Oh, thank you for this. Okay. Evan Corcoran, Pat Cipollone, Patrick Philbin are the people who testified at the grand jury in D.C. Awesome. BH, thank you for that. So that's interesting. Yeah, I can't wait for that motion. Prosecutorial misconduct incoming. Ryan Patrick's here, says smash that like button. Good to see you, Ryan. Ryan Patrick in the house, also on YouTube. Thanks for swinging by, Ryan. And I agree with Ryan. who's a member, who says smash that like button. Thank you for saying that, Ryan. Happy New Year to you, my friend, and thank you for stopping by. We got Ray's here, says a country song. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. From Ray Ronk. Ray, thank you for the support, my friend. Happy New Year to you. We got BH says, I want the 17th Amendment repealed and the Commerce Clause clarified. Overturn Wickard versus Filburn. The Commerce Clause has been so perverted, it will make your blood boil. Okay, the Commerce Clause section of con law was one of the most infuriating reads ever. It basically says the federal government has total control over your economic life, period. Like, even if you never go into interstate commerce. So for example, if you just make a widget, I make a widget in Arizona, I want to sell it to Arizona people. Federal government can say, well, one of your widgets, even though you never even try to ever leave Arizona. This often happens like in farming, for example. Well, like I want to farm and I want to make a ton of milk. Well, some of that milk, some of those widgets, they might cross outside of Arizona and enter into interstate commerce. And so therefore, since it's now interstate commerce, because the Constitution says that the feds can regulate commerce amongst the states, they have just said every single widget is now in the state commerce line and the government can regulate it. So it means basically everything, which is why they have control over the whole economy. And it makes my blood boil. Anyways, BH, great comment. Thank you for that. This one came in from Waldo. 5 new membos from Waldo. Aaron's coming in. Art P's here. We got Chris C. Kat J's coming in. And Piper Lynn, all here courtesy of Waldo, who is a member, bringing in new membos. And we're grateful for that. We do members-only streams in the morning. We do Saturday shows. And we would love to have you join us. This old guy's on local says, watching the Trump administration assistants, I felt like it was a pilot for a replacement on ABC's For the View. Maybe. Are they going to bring, I don't know that they can have 2 ex-Trumpers on there. Alyssa's already got that role. So Cassidy Hutchinson's going to have to get a gig with Jen Psaki or something. This old guy, good to see you on that one. Jal Max here says 3 women desperate for relevance. Sadly, they are just laughable in this moment of desperation. Their comments are just subjective platitudes that you hear daily on MSNBC. They add 0 value. They literally said nothing. Like, they could have said, in my experience, I heard Trump say this, and that's why I think he's going to do this. I'm real concerned about this statement that Trump said, this policy position that he's taking, that's adverse to my beliefs because of this. What he has promised to do, they just say retribution, and we're going to be attacked, and all. It's like, okay, my gosh. They add 0 value, so why give them a platform? Good Lord, how embarrassing, ladies. Well, the reason we do it is to poke fun at them. It's to dunk on them and to lampoon them and to mock them into oblivion because they're not even really good at what they're doing. And it's kind of hysterical. And I know it's kind of irritating for some people out there. It's like, why are we listening to these obnoxious people? I just like to dunk on them. They take themselves so seriously. They come out there every day like, we're under attack. Okay, relax. Just stop it for a second, okay? Let's just all settle down here. You're being ridiculous. You're being ridiculous. Calm down. All right. Anyways, so it is embarrassing. It's also kind of hysterical. B-Man says this is those ladies' apology tours. Well, Jen Psaki's definitely inviting them over for whatever they do there on that show. We got Lucy Lou Lane. What's up, Lucy Lou Lane? Says, I heard the attorney for Hutchinson had to file a 15-page legal doc about her lies that she testified about. Do you know if that's true? I don't know, actually. Now that you mention it, I think I might have scrolled by something about a filing. But what case would that have been in? I do not know, Lucy Lou Lane. I think you might be onto something. I think you might be onto something, but I don't know specifically about it. I'll look it up. I mean, maybe it had to do with this new release. Maybe she's also got a book out or something. Or maybe there's a defamation lawsuit that's taking place. Maybe she's a witness in something. I'll look into it. I always like dunking on Clavicle Girl because she's the most ridiculous one. Air Force Vet says, imagine if Trump was in this live chat right now. He'd be making some interesting posts about those 3. He sure would. Someone should invite him over to the show, man. We should get him on here. I'd love to have Trump on here. Hey, Trump, what's your reaction to these 3 TDSers, the Spice Girls? What do you think? See what he says. Chubby's here, says so many leftists come out claiming they get all these threats. But why don't we ever hear about anyone being arrested or even prosecuted for them? Because it's all lies, that's why. Crying wolf. The stories that I've been hearing have been about a bunch of people on the right getting swatted, like all over the place, like on Christmas and stuff. I'd like to see what some of these threats are to these three Spice Girls. Well, okay, come on, post something. Let's see what it is. Is it like legitimate criticism? Is it like, hey, we think that you're a liar because you're making up lies? Is that what they're talking about? Because that's just what you get by engaging in public discourse. When you lie about things, people call you liars, you know? So if it's a criticism like that, then I don't have any sympathy at all for that, because that's part of the game. STFU says, the Maine secretary sounds super Xanax-y, allegedly. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's just their natural state, you know, which is like kind of borderline dementia. I don't know. Spud says, Rob, I call them the not so spicy girls. The not so spicy girls. That's also good too. Yeah, maybe they'll have a song someday. Maybe they'll have a song. They'll have an anti-Trump TDS song with Rachel Maddow and Jen Psaki dancing around with Anderson Cooper taking shots. Oh gosh. Hey, Nivek is here. Says President, VP are not officers in the Constitution in general. They're not appointees, cabinet members, and other non-elected officials. In general, appointees, cabinet members, and other non-elected officials are officers. And I think that's a great point from Nivek. And thank you for sending that one in. The point being that the 14th Amendment doesn't apply because it only applies to officers, and the president is outside of that scope. And so thank you for sending that one in, Nivek. We'll see how the Supreme Court and others rule on that when it gets there, because that is the second case that is currently at the court, that is at the Supreme Court right now. We've got John Allen says, Rob, this is a completely off-topic comment, but I want to offer prayers out there for Vientikis and Zach, two excellent mods along with John, to feel better. Man, the sickness is going around. A lot of people got it. Both have been feeling under the weather, and V is especially having trouble shaking off this cold. Even Bacon's not doing it. So shout out and prayers to both of them that they will feel better quickly, and thank you, Rob. John, what a nice thing to say. Thank you for sending those prayers out. And so, my friends, we're sending some love to Vientikis and Zach, modding down the fort for us on a regular basis. A lot of coldness going out there. You can even hear a little bit still in my head. And so I hope that you are feeling better, Zach and V, and everybody else out there who's got a little bit of that cold floating around. John, thanks for saying that, and thanks for sending the warm wishes in. We got this. Here, we got another prayer right now. And so, my friends, we definitely got to round up and circle up on this one. Brian Reinhart is here. And so we're pausing on this one. Asking all here, please pray for my daughter. Okay, her name is Crystal. So prayers for Crystal with a K. She's in the ICU right now on a ventilator fighting for her life. So thank you. And so, Brian, we pray for your daughter's quick and speedy recovery here from the Watcher fam. We're sending all of our love and good energy directly to Crystal and to your family. And we ask for God's strength in her speedy and quick recovery. Amen. From Brian. So thank you, Brian, for sharing that, my friends. If you're the praying type, let's send them their way. Whew, okay. Prayers for Brian. Brian, thanks for saying that. Zach, thanks for bringing that to our attention here. We got SD 1985s in the house. Says, how can Jack Smith use Nixon's situation for Trump? Does he know 100% that Nixon feared prosecution and that's why he left office? I think he kind of actually made that point. But he was saying that, I originally don't know, but we know that Trump's activities were not illegal. So Trump shouldn't be fearing prosecution for stuff that is within the outer bounds of the perimeter. And we got Tweak is in the house. Man, Tweak, it's really good to see you. We missed this last time, but Tweak sent in a Happy New Year dono, a very nice one. It was a $47 tip. Why? You know why, my friends. Happy New Year, Robin Watchers. Let's go. 47, 2024. And so thank you for sending those in. Tweak sent this one in. Happy New Year. We will make America great again. And I absolutely love that picture, by the way. It's a great render. It's a great photo. Happy New Year, my friends. Tweak, beautiful. Thank you for sending that in over on Locals. Sent this one in. 2016 was A New Hope. 2020 was The Empire Strikes Back. But in 2024, it's Return of the Jedi. That's right, my friends. It's the final arc in the hero's journey. Act 3. It's going to be great. We got this one, and thank you, Tweak. Again, thanks for the very generous dono, and Happy New Year to you, my friend. Thanks for being a part of our community. Jeremiah says, Rob, please go and serve Destiny. What is that? The debate. That would blow you up to a whole new audience, and it would also be a cakewalk for you. It'd be a great show. I haven't even been invited. Nobody's invited me. We got B.H. Williams is here, says, no one will ever ask you on a date. Could be perceived as a threat. LOL, the test is, have you made a police report for each threat? My bet is no. Yeah, like, are they upset that they're being rejected on Tinder? Is that what this is? They're on Tinder. They're like, no one's dating me. Or something. I'm not sure. And we got SD 1985. John Allen's in the house. Some very great donos. Hey, this one came in. Another one from Scott. Thank you, Scott, for sending this one in. Scott Z is sending in a very nice dono. Scott, thank you for sending 2 in today. No question on that one, but very, very generous. And that's fun. So Scott Z's in the house, and we appreciate that. All right. So that, my friends, is it for us. Let's take a look and see what's happening over on the X platform. We'll see what's happening on X. And we have some comments in the house. Let's see what's happening here. Who is watching us? We've got 7 viewers. All right. So that's okay. We're warming back up. We got Vientikis. We got James. We got Danny McWilliams. We got Villains Brew. Darkside is here, says, Rob, it was over $2 billion in damages and more than 2,000 officers injured, multiple killed during the, quote, Summer of Love. George is here. We've got Villains Brew Coffee's here. Darkside Digital talking about Lectern Leader. Would love to talk to him. Says James Pepper's here. Vientikis is here. Says, I reviewed Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, and I drank a mimosa, and I made up some BS. And Danny McWilliams is also over there on the X platform. Says James Pepper's here, and that is me. Vientikis is here. Stop talking to yourself, Rob. That, my friends, is us over on the X platform, and so you can come follow us over there. And so we're going to leave it there on the day, my friends. Don't forget to check out watcherlodge.com. Don't forget to come over to our website, robertgovea.com. And then don't forget to check us out at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is where we're going right now. And we're picking up the pace because I don't want to be late for our after party. I want to have some time for our after party. And so we're wrapping it up right there. Scott, thank you for sending that final dono in. Before we wrap it up, I want to thank the mods and the mean smiths in the area, in the house, modding down the fort for us. Our friend Vientikis Prime clipping away for us. K-Bean in the house. Just Cause in the house. Playing hooky, our friend Ronnie Zulu's here. Beyond Geo. Zach Nichols clipping away for us, and John Allen as well. Thank you to Janek and Dog Digger. Also our meme smith, Sleepy Dog Lee, Geegum Geegum, and Nathan N810. Over on the Locals is where we're going next for our members only after party. And so we'd love to see you there, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Come and check out our fitness challenge, watcherlodge.com. We're going to hang out for a little bit, and we'll be back tomorrow, my friends, to get into it all again. We're going to have a lot to unpack here, and we hope to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful day, my friends. Make it a beautiful night, and Happy New Year. Happy 2024. It's going to be a great year. I'm so grateful to go into it and through it with you together. And so we'll see you back here tomorrow to do it again. Until then, make it a great night, and we'll see you back here soon. Bye-bye. Bye.